All right, hi folks. This is Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. We're just getting set up for a Facebook Live Q&A. Um, so grab your pencil if you've got any questions. Want to jot them down and then send me a comment. I guess pencil's old-fashioned these days. Um, but yes, hi. Um, I'm just checking to see if I got my phone going here so I can see comments. But as always, if you can see me and hear me, just let me know. That's great for me to hear. Okay, so we'll just be a moment here as I'm getting myself set up. Oh, things are always changing. There we go. All right, let's see what I can do here. Okay. All right, looks like I'm coming through. Hi, Donna and Ian. Thanks for joining. Um, and I think we'll get started because I've got some fun things to share. Always do. Again, it's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. Thanks for joining me on this sunny afternoon. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining. And I'm here to answer questions that you might have, share observations. Don't hesitate to post a comment if you want in Facebook. And as always, if you are watching this later in recording, you can always message us on Facebook, or you can send an email to birdsetc, BIRDSETC at nhaudubon.org. And we've got folks who are happy to answer your questions. All right, can you see me and hear me okay? Let me know if you can. And thanks for joining me. So the first thing I have to at least share a little bit about is the Superbowl of Birding that was on Saturday. I've been talking about it. I was a team of one, the Townie solitaire, seeing how many species I could find in the town of Seabrook, and I had a great time. Started at 5 a.m. with a great horned owl calling. The official start time is 5, so that's when we do our owling. And it was really a lot of fun. It was a fun day. It was very cold, but it was very fun. And of course, this is the time of year when great horned owls start setting up their territories and getting ready to nest. They're really early nesters. So I was thrilled to have one calling at my first stop because sometimes owls are really hard to turn up on the Superbowl of Birding. It's always the last weekend in January. So owls are not necessarily calling a lot at that time of year, but the great horns was. And actually, for me, I had quite an owl day. I had 4 species of owls, which was fantastic. After the great horned, I had a barred owl calling a few stops later. I hooted to see if I could get one to respond. The barred owl is the 8 hooter, the who cooks for you, who cooks for you all. Hoo, 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 hoo. So I did that quite a few times. Nothing responded, nothing responded. I was just about to give up and I thought, I'll do just a couple more hoo-ahs. So I did a hoo-ah, hoo-ah. And wouldn't you know, a barred owl called back. Hoo-ah! Not the full 8 hoots, just that hoo-ah call. So that was a lot of fun. And a few stops later, it was getting light by 6:30 or so. And I was off and running with land birds. Although my feet were freezing by then, it was 8 degrees when we started. Feet were cold, but I had a red crossbill fly over at dawn. And red crossbill is a 5-point bird, and you have to call in 5 points. And if you're the first person to call in a 5-point species, you get bonus 3 points. And I was the first person to call in a red crossbill, so I got a 3-point bonus. The day went on for there. It got a little bit warmer, about up to 19. My feet thawed out. Was in the car some with the heater going and then outside, and really turned out to be a great day. My other two owls were eastern screech owl and snowy owl. And if you've seen my post on Facebook, you'll see the picture of the snowy owl. I was really lucky to see it because I was in near the beach in Seabrook, and the owl flew between the houses, and I saw it just out of the corner of my eye, and I thought, oh, that's got to be a snowy. Um, but I needed to go find it to confirm, and I was able to find it sitting in the top. Hardly any evergreens in this area, but there was one in someone's yard, and it was sitting in the top of this evergreen tree. And then my screech owl, finding that was a really interesting story, and it's educational too in terms of if you might be looking for owls. This was the middle of the day, and I was at a stop where there was a little bit of open water. So I was pishing for birds. So pishing is one of those noises you make that sometimes birds get curious about. It's a psh, 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 psh. And you do that as loud as you can and see if the birds will come in. So I was doing that, and there were some birds coming in, but nothing that was new for me that day. And then I noticed that the blue jays and the chickadees behind me were squawking. So eventually I turned around, and they were in a tree around this hole in the tree. And the chickadee was even perched on the edge of the hole looking in it. And I thought, there's got to be an owl there. So I pished some more. I tried my screech owl call, which I really can't do. They don't screech at all. They have this little ooh, ooh call. And I'm terrible at it. But nothing popped up. And then I went back a few hours later, and there was a little screech owl sitting in the hole. So that was one of my highlights of the day. And I ended up finding 64 species and won the Townie Award. And my colleague Pam Hunt and Unity Deans, they won the Rockingham County Award for the most number of points in Rockingham County. So the Superbowl of Birding was the semi-Superbowl of Birding this year was a very fun day on Saturday. So thought I'd update y'all with that. Some interesting sightings coming along here. I was out this morning on my walk, my weekly survey, and the cardinals were singing and the chickadees were singing. So spring is coming, folks. Don't despair. So the cardinal song is the So listen for that. The males will sing from the top of the tree, and especially in the early morning when the sun is just coming up, they're great to hear and beautiful to see. Now the chickadees are that little chickadee dee dee. They sound kind of like Phoebe, Phoebe, but they're not a Phoebe. It's a chickadee call. And they start singing it round about this time of year. Not a lot yet. It'll increase as we go along, but it's definitely a sound of spring. All right, hi to folks. Thanks for joining me. Joe, thanks for that. Congratulations. It was a lot of fun. There are still pine grosbeaks around. Remember, pine grosbeaks will feed on fruit, so watch those fruit trees. And I had a single common redpoll. Now, common redpolls are one of those northern species that we see a lot in some years and none in others, and they're definitely around this winter. So watch for those. Of course, we've got the Backyard Winter Bird Survey coming up. So I wanted to talk a little bit about participating in that. But if you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to post a comment, or if you have a question, please go ahead and put it in the comments. That's great. I can always get diverted and come back around to other topics. But Backyard Winter Bird Survey is a week from this weekend, so February 13th and 14th. And I'm going to try and post the link to the information on the survey in the comments right now. So let me see if I can do that. All right. Hard winter bird survey. Okay. Oops, stop that. Why are you doing that? I've almost got you. All right, hopefully I've posted that. Oh no, what happened? Maybe I haven't posted it. All right, there we go. I think I got a post there with the link for the survey. But if for some reason it doesn't come through, just go ahead and, oh yeah, there it is. I see it. I was going to say, go ahead and Google the Backyard Winter Bird Survey in New Hampshire, and I'm sure you'll find it. So February 13th and 14th. Now you can watch for as little or as long as you want. So if you only have a few minutes, you can watch. If you want to watch the whole weekend, you can watch. And what we ask is that you just keep a rough track of how long you're watching. So if you watch all day while it's light, it's 10 to 12 hours. Or if you watch off and on for a few hours, then you probably got, 3/4 of an hour's worth of watching time. So just keep track of that. Watch for as little as long as you want. And then when you're watching, you want to count the maximum number of a species that you see at any one time. So for example, I had 2 cardinals early this morning at my feeder, but then later in late morning, I had 3 cardinals. So my total count is 3. Now, you can keep track of males and females if you can tell them apart. And of course, with cardinals, you can. You can tell males from females. So you can keep track of how many females you've had at once and how many males you've had at once and add them together. For something like blue jays, where you can't tell males and females apart, then just count the maximum number. So if at 9 o'clock in the morning you have 6 and later in the day you have 15, then your top count is 15. Don't add the 2 together. Now, sometimes you'll have a large flock. And if you are lucky enough to have a large flock of something like redpolls or siskins, they can be 50 to 100 birds in a flock. So how do you count them? Well, one of my friends always used to say, count their legs and divide by 2. There you go. But for the rest of us, sometimes you just have to estimate. And it's okay when you get a large flock like that if you can't count each individual. There are a couple of different ways you can estimate. You can take a look and see, all right, there's 10 in this area. How many areas do I have that look like there are about 10 birds? And then add them together. Sometimes you can look and take a picture of the flock and see how many, you can actually count them or roughly how many, count by tens. Sometimes you just have to count the ones that are at your feeder and maybe say, oh, I think there are about 20 in the tree and add on to that. So it's really helpful to just estimate if you can, because if you say big flock, we can't enter that into the data. We have to have a number of some kind. So a big flock will turn into 0 in the computer. So at least try and give some kind of an estimate. And then sometimes you'll have an unusual bird. It's not on the normal checklist for identifying, something that you don't see very often. Well, grab a quick picture of it if you can and write down the details that you see. Write down what it looks like. Um, something like a pileated woodpecker, you can say it had red on the top of its head and was big with a black back, a little bit of white on the wings. Just write down something about what it looks like. It definitely doesn't help to say it looks just like the picture in the book. Write down what you saw. Don't worry about what the book looks like. Write down what you saw. And if you do get a picture, you can email it to us, at bwbs at nhaudubon.org. And that address is right on the link that I sent out. So go ahead and see what you can get for photos. We've had people document some really great rarities. Sometimes we had someone who found a varied thrush, which is very rare. Wood thrush we had last winter, and they are or can be common in the summer in some years, but they should be down in Central or South America by now. And so having one in the winter is really rare. So the photo documentation was great. So now what do you do if you have a bird that you can't identify? Well, we asked people on the survey to record only what they can identify. Don't make guesses. But if you can get a picture, send it to us. We'll try and answer as soon as we can, and then you can add that onto your survey. All right, any other questions on the survey out there? Don't hesitate to send a message. I'm just checking my phone in case I'm missing anything. I see a few people. Hi, Ann. Thanks for joining. But if you would like to receive a packet for the survey in the mail, you can just call New Hampshire Audubon at 224-9909 and ask us to mail you a packet. Make sure you give us your mailing address and we'll send one out. There's still plenty of time to do that between now and say Tuesday or so. Or you can send us an email at that address, the bwbs at nhaudubon.org, and we'll send you a packet. Happy to do that. You can get the materials online too, and you can enter your data online if you would rather do that than do a paper form. Any of those options works. My final point on the survey is please report whether you have birds or no birds. It's important for us to see the ups and the downs in bird populations. So we like it, and it's preferable if you can do the survey every year, whether you have lots of birds or only a few birds. And that helps us give an idea of those ups and downs of the various populations. And we've been able to see some very interesting patterns in birds, and also it allows us to identify birds we need to keep an eye on. So in the last couple of years, black-backed chickadees have been down, but they're now trending back up again a little bit. So we're keeping an eye on those. So hope you can join us on the survey. It's a lot of fun to do, very easy, and anybody can participate. If you have any questions about that, please message us or put a question in the comment right now. That would be great. You'll see on Facebook, our feature wildlife plant is hawthorn. And I wanted to mention it because there's a bird that often uses hawthorn, not to eat the berries, but it uses the thorns. Hawthorns have some pretty significant thorns. And a bird called the Northern Shrike will spear its prey on those thorns. It may use it to hold the prey while it eats, or for the prey to sort of be there like a storage, cold storage, that it can come back to and eat later. Now, shrikes look a lot like mockingbirds. They are birds from farther north, and they're gray. Now, do I have my book? See, we'll try and pull out the book. But they're from farther north, and sometimes we see them in the wintertime. And I think we've talked about them before, but I'll show it to you again because of that really interesting link to the hawthorn plant. Okay, so here's the Northern Shrike, and you'll see it's very gray, like, whoops, there, it's this one. It's very gray, like the mockingbird, but has kind of a black mass, and the wings are a little blacker. And the Northern Shrikes feed on other birds and rodents. whereas the mockingbird eats fruit and insects. So you'll see sometimes a bird that looks like a mockingbird, but it's chasing a smaller bird. This means you should give it a second look. It doesn't mean it isn't a mockingbird, because mockingbirds are territorial around fruit, bushes with fruit and trees with fruit. So that's their food source, and they'll chase other birds away that come to that berry food source. So just because a gray bird is chasing another doesn't mean it's a shrike, but it's a tip off to give it a second look. And the Northern Shrike, when it catches a, a bird or a small rodent, will bring it to something like a hawthorn and spear it on those thorns. So they're very interesting birds. Now, come springtime, they'll head farther north. They won't be around much. Actually, April would be late for them. So we may see them February and into March, and then they'll be headed back north. So gosh, we're going to be at spring before we know it. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to post it in the comments or message us at Facebook with any comment that you might have, or you can always email it to birds etc, BIRDS at NHAudubon.org. And again, this is Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. So I had a couple of other fun facts I thought I'd share. One is about a bird called a Northern Goshawk. Now we have a number of different kinds of hawks. We have buteos, which is the category that includes red-tailed hawks. They have broad wings and short tails. And then we have a group of hawks called accipiters, and they have sort of long, broad wings and long tails. And the accipiters are designed for catching birds. They're very maneuverable, and the sharp-shinned hawk and the Cooper's hawk are the two most common accipiters, and we often see them at feeders going after our birds. I have a couple of Cooper's hawks around my neighborhood that terrorize the local birds. And when they come through, everybody clears out and the feeders are quiet as can be. The Northern Goshawk is the largest of the accipiter, and it's found in forested areas, not usually found in neighborhoods or suburban areas. It needs big forested tracts of land. But sometimes we do get them migrating. The ones that we usually see are immatures because they're usually, the adults are on their territory year round. But every once in a while, there's a crash in their food source. That's the ruffed grouse and the snowshoe hares. And when those two populations crash at once, even the adults will sometimes move, and we may see them more in the southern, southeastern part of the state. So we haven't had a lot of evidence of that happening this year, but you never know when you might see something like that. Thought it was a very interesting tidbit to share. Joe's asking, what is the best month to put up new bluebird house and the best location? Great question. So I would put up my bluebird houses in early March. If I don't already have them up, that's when I would put them up. If you have them up already, you should clean them out in early March. Sometimes little mice and other birds will get in there. You want to clear them out. Or if last year's nests are in the box, you also want to clear that material out, because sometimes the nests have parasites from the previous broods, the eggs from parasites. So you want to clear that out so it's healthier for the birds. So I would put them up in early March. Bluebirds probably won't start nesting until April or maybe even early May, but they may be investigating. Bluebirds never used to be here in the winter time, but we see them a lot more in the winter now. They feed on fruit, so they may be here even now, or they may return closer sooner than we've seen them in the past. So, and they may start nesting earlier. So go with early March for putting them up if you can. A couple of tips on bluebirds in particular. They like big open areas. So you want to put the house in as open area as possible. If you have a big field, put it in the middle of the field. You may even be able to put up a couple of bluebird boxes. But you want open area around them. They're not birds of the woods. They're birds of fields, and they may be on the edges of fields, but they like to nest out more in the open. Excuse me. So when you put a bluebird house up, if you put it on a pole, you want to put a predator guard on that pole because things like raccoons and squirrels can climb the poles and they can reach into the nest box. They can kill the adults, they can kill the young, the eggs. So if you can put a predator guard on that pole, that will help the nest be much more successful than without the predator guard. And in terms of the direction to face the hole, um, you may need to evaluate your particular situation, but you don't want to put the hole facing the predominant cold winds. So around my area, that's going to be best to face the house south, southeast, southwest, something like that. But you may have an individual situation. Let's say you had a garage and you've got a big area of open habitat next to the garage. You want to put the back of the box to the garage, so that the hole is facing out away from the garage. Let's see, any other tips for bluebirds? Make sure you get the right sized hole opening. That's going to be 1.5 inches for bluebirds. And then of course you want to look out for house sparrows, because if you get house sparrows nesting in there, you'll never get bluebirds because the house sparrows will drive the bluebirds away. So you may need to make sure that you can keep house sparrows from nesting in those boxes. Joe, if you have a follow-up question, please don't hesitate to post. Just going to check my phone, make sure I haven't missed anything. If I missed anybody's questions, I don't think so. All right, we have been getting a lot of reports of bluebirds lately. So there definitely are quite a few around this winter, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens on the Backyard Winter Bird Survey, because last year the number of bluebirds reported on the survey was actually higher than the number of robins reported. And again, robins, like bluebirds, never used to be seen in the winter, but we see them a lot more now. We don't know 100% why we see bluebirds and robins in the winter now. It may be more moderate winters. It may be more available fruit. Both robins and bluebirds will switch to fruit in the wintertime. So people have planted more things like crab apples and berry-bearing shrubs as part of their landscaping that may be providing additional food for them. But bottom line is we really don't know why they are more common. How do you keep house sparrows out? Oh boy, I wish I had a really good answer for that, because I have that problem. I have birdhouses at the community gardens in Concord, and they have gotten taken over by house sparrows. The first year I put them up, the tree swallows were in them. And then after that, the house sparrows have been a real battle. There is some good information online about things that you can try. One of the things you probably want to do is block up the hole on your house until you see bluebirds around, so that the house sparrows can't get in there before the bluebirds. If you do get house sparrows in there, you want to keep cleaning out their nesting materials to try and discourage them. House sparrows are not federally protected because they're an invasive non-native species. So you don't have to worry about destroying their nest or the eggs from a legal standpoint. Um, and you have to be persistent. The house sparrows will continue. I had a problem doing that because I had several boxes up and I cleared out one box and the tree swallows were in another box, and the house sparrows that I cleared out moved to the tree swallow box, and they killed the tree swallows that were nesting there. They killed the female, and she was dead in the box with a hole pecked in her skull. So I'm not sure that was the best strategy for that particular situation. And so I'm trying to figure out the best thing to do to keep the house sparrows out. And I may have to close up my houses for a year so that nobody can nest in them to see if that will discourage the house sparrows. But yeah, so if you've got bluebirds coming to mealworms, if you don't have house sparrows now, then you've got a good chance that the bluebirds will be there or be able to nest without the house sparrow issue. Oh, and one other thing I want to mention now, we've gotten a couple of reports of a possible salmonella outbreak in birds. We're just investigating and checking up on it. But sometimes when we have big flocks of siskins or redpolls around, they can get salmonella that then spreads through the flock. And the birds that have salmonella get puffed up. They just kind of sit there lethargic. They just look kind of sick. And then some of them will die. If you do find that happening at your feeders, you want to be sure to take your feeders down for just a little while. You want to disinfect them with a mild solution of bleach and water. Maybe in the interim, while you have the feeders down, you could scatter seeds underneath your shrubs so the birds can still find some food. But keep the feeders down in hopes of dispersing the larger flock to a safer feeding location. And then try putting the feeders back up again. If it still happens, you get big flocks and you have birds dying, then you may need to pull those feeders in, or at least the thistle feeders in. If it's something like siskins, whatever feeder they're going to, you may need to pull that in. But it does happen in some winters when we have big flocks of, sometimes it can be goldfinch, but oftentimes it's siskins or redpolls. So keep your eye out for that and be sure to try and keep your feeders clean. All right, so I've got a couple more minutes and then I'll wrap it up. If anybody has any last minute questions, please post, let me know. I'm going to check the phone, make sure I haven't missed anybody. All right, Joe, I think I got all your questions there. And hope you can join us on the Backyard Winter Bird Survey coming up. It's always fun to do, fun thing to do. Again, it's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. If you're watching this as a recording, you can always message us on Facebook or email us with your questions at birds, etc., BIRDS, ETC, at nhaudubon.org. Thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. I hope you have some great birds and enjoy looking out at your feeders to see what's around. Spring will be here before we know it. Isn't that great? This is Becky again with New Hampshire Audubon, and we're an independent nonprofit organization. We're independent of National Audubon, and we depend on people like you for support. And we hope you'll make a donation on our website. Thank you so much. Have a great day.